Accessing archive file. Series. Dreamlog stories. Sleep cycle recording retrieved. Welcome to the gentle future, where dreams remember us.
Echoes in the Dust, a quiet bookstore on Mars. It was always quiet in my bookstore. So quiet I could almost hear the dust settling between pages. Sometimes I imagined each particle landing gently on a cover, adding another thin layer to stories that waited patiently to be found. Mars was known for its silence, its peaceful emptiness, but my shop felt even quieter somehow, like the books themselves breathed softly, unwilling to disturb the stillness. The shop had no real name. I never gave it one. Customers were rare enough that names weren't necessary. And besides, everyone simply called it the bookstore, as if there were no other shops on the entire planet. To be fair, there weren't many. Mars was still the frontier, a strange and delicate blend of the futuristic and familiar, a quiet, small-town vibe beneath tinted glass domes and gentle amber lights. Everyone who settled here was running from something or toward something, usually a bit of both. As for me, I wasn't sure what I was running from exactly. I'd been here for years, maybe decades. I stopped counting after the third winter, winters marked by brief, silent snowfalls of iron-rich red dust. Memories had a funny way of thinning out on Mars, like the atmosphere itself stripped them gently away. Everything blurred softly at the edges, dreamlike, until the only certainty left was this little shop, filled with quiet books and quieter thoughts. Each morning was the same gentle ritual. I brewed my tea, imported earth chamomile, because Martian-grown herbs never tasted quite right, and I carefully arranged my favorite titles along the window ledge. Old classics, mostly, Earth stories from before Mars was even a possibility. They felt comforting, timeless. I spent hours in the silence, occasionally flipping through pages, letting my fingertips trace the faded words, waiting, mostly, for nothing in particular. There was only one customer who came in regularly. I never knew their name, and they never spoke. It didn't matter. On Mars, such quirks were common. We settlers were odd people, after all. The customer always came at precisely the same hour, moving gently through aisles like a ghost. They wore layers of soft, muted fabric that concealed their frame, and they always left footprints, tiny red marks, powdered dust against my polished wooden floors. I'd watch them from my spot behind the counter, sipping tea as they picked up each book, held it tenderly, sometimes lingering on a page, reading carefully, silently, almost lovingly. And always they chose one book, just one, to bring to me at the counter, paying in smooth coins of coppery alloy, then slipping back outside. The little bell over the door chimed softly, the sound swallowed by the Martian quiet. Sometimes I wondered if the customer could even speak at all, or if maybe they'd simply forgotten how, out here in the endless silence of red deserts. Maybe it was easier that way, not to speak. Maybe words got too heavy after a while, especially when you carried them around all alone. Today began like any other day, unremarkable and lovely in its quiet routine. I finished my tea, tracing the rim of my cup as the amber glow from the dome outside grew brighter, casting long, gentle shadows across the bookshelves. I felt oddly peaceful. So peaceful, I might have mistaken the day for a dream. But it was real enough. I knew this because the customer arrived exactly on schedule, as they always did, drifting silently through the aisles. Today, their presence felt even lighter, more fleeting, like a memory of a dream itself. This time, they lingered longer at one shelf, longer than usual. I found myself watching, curiosity gently tugging at my thoughts. They were focused intently, their gloved fingers tracing slowly down the spines, searching carefully, deliberately. Finally, they paused, pulled out a slim volume and held it tenderly, almost like it was precious, fragile. They opened it, turning the pages with what felt like reverence, stopping suddenly near the back. Something about their posture changed, softened, became almost melancholy. For a moment, I felt compelled to break my rule, to speak, but I didn't. Words felt like an intrusion now, like they'd puncture something delicate between us. They closed the book, carefully brought it to me, and gently placed it on the counter. Our exchange of coins was silent, familiar. I watched as they turned slowly and headed toward the door. But today, just before stepping out, they paused, almost imperceptibly, then reached into a hidden fold of their clothing and pulled out a small object, leaving it deliberately on a table by the door. They slipped outside without looking back. I waited, holding my breath, though I wasn't sure why. Finally, I stepped out from behind the counter and crossed the short distance to the table. The object they'd left behind was a small, flat box, its surface softly glowing in the shop's gentle light. I picked it up cautiously, feeling the faintest hum beneath my fingertips. It was sleek, smooth, designed with an elegance I'd almost forgotten existed. A data box, an old Earth relic. These things hadn't been made in decades, antiques now, remnants of another time. My heart quickened, unsure why my quiet customer would leave me something so precious, so rare. I gently pressed aside and a small projection rose up, flickering softly into view. It showed a single still image, old, faded, tinged softly in sepia. A photograph, captured long before Mars was anything more than a distant dream. And there, standing quietly among smiling faces I couldn't quite recognize, was me. A younger me, an Earth me, a me I didn't remember being. I stared, breath caught in my throat, as the bookstore's gentle quiet deepened around me. The face staring back at me from the past was mine, undeniably, but it held secrets I didn't recognize, stories I'd forgotten, lost somewhere along the endless trail of red dust. For the first time in what felt like forever, Mars didn't feel quiet. It felt full, almost crowded with whispers, memories, questions I couldn't begin to ask. And somehow, beneath all that quiet, I suddenly wondered, had the silent customer known all along? Time seemed softer now, more uncertain. Ever since seeing that photograph, my reality had shifted quietly, subtly, a gentle ripple spreading through the pond of my memory. I placed the data box carefully on the countertop and stared at the image again. My younger self smiled out at me shyly from a crowded street corner, surrounded by laughter, bright colors, and faces half hidden behind faded familiarity. It was strange, seeing myself in a time I didn't remember, like looking at someone else's dream, uncertain whether it belonged to me. I spent the rest of the afternoon absorbed in quiet contemplation, pacing slowly through the aisles, fingertips brushing lightly against the books, as if searching for some hidden comfort or whispered clue. The bookstore felt different somehow, fuller, more alive. It seemed aware of my confusion, its shelves patiently holding their stories, offering me quiet reassurance. That night, sleep was elusive, shimmering at the edges of my awareness, but never fully arriving. I tossed gently in my bed, surrounded by Mars' soothing silence. In the rare moments of drifting, I saw hazy images, streets lit with the warm amber lights, a bustling city, people calling my name in distant voices. A life I'd lived, yet felt separate from me now. Each glimpse dissolved softly, leaving me feeling hollow yet strangely comforted, as if each lost fragment was reaching out, whispering that it was okay to remember. Morning came slowly, Mars awakening quietly beneath pale pink skies that shifted to soft shades of amber and gold. The gentle glow filled my bookstore, its shelves welcoming me back to routine, the subtle rhythms of dust and silence easing my restless heart. Yet today, something tugged gently at the back of my thoughts, urging me not to ignore the mystery, the delicate thread my silent customer had left behind. I brewed my tea mechanically, thoughts drifting. Had my customer known who I was all this time? Was our silent exchange a quiet way of waiting for me to remember myself? It felt like a gentle kindness, a patient nudge to awaken me from the dream I'd unknowingly wrapped around my life. When the quiet customer returned at their usual hour, I felt an odd fluttering in my chest, curiosity entwined with cautious excitement. They moved gently among the shelves as always, careful fingers gliding along spines of books, yet today it felt different, charged with a quiet significance. I found myself wishing they'd speak, longing to hear their voice break the silence, yet feeling protective of our delicate unspoken ritual. When they approached the counter with today's book, a small volume, its cover worn with age, I felt my heart quicken slightly. I took it with gentle fingers, noticing the title, Dreams of a Blue Planet. I smiled inwardly at the quiet irony, then paused. Hesitating just briefly, I looked up to meet the customer's gaze, hidden deep beneath the shadow of their hood. "Thank you," I whispered softly. Words emerged before I knew I'd chosen to speak them. The customer tilted their head gently, slightly acknowledging the words, before leaving quietly, the little bell above the door chiming softly as they disappeared into the reddish Martian twilight. After they'd gone, I opened the worn book curiously, flipping gently through pages filled with delicate illustrations of earth landscapes, oceans, forests, mountains, and skies tinted shades of blue I'd almost forgotten. My fingers paused at an illustration halfway through, my breath catching softly in surprise. It was the very street from the photograph, sketched in gentle watercolor, blurred slightly like a memory from a dream. Beneath the image, scribbled in faint pencil, were words I recognized instantly as my own handwriting. "When we forget who we are, the world remembers for us." A chill swept softly through me, not fear, but a gentle, reflective kind of wonder. My eyes drifted slowly back to the counter where the photograph hovered quietly above the data box, the faces smiling gently from the past. Who were those faces? Friends? Family? People I'd loved and forgotten? The realization felt softly painful, yet tenderly hopeful, like the ache of a beautiful song I hadn't heard in a lifetime. As Marv settled once again into evening quiet, the shop lights dimmed, casting soft shadows over shelves that seemed more comforting now, knowing they'd held secrets from me all this time. I found myself smiling gently, grateful to the quiet customer whose silence had spoken so deeply, so profoundly. The days that followed became a gentle pursuit, each morning a ritual of slow discovery. Books I had passed countless times now revealed soft messages hidden within margins, handwritten notes I'd forgotten I'd penned myself, fragments of a life carefully tucked away, patiently awaiting my rediscovery. And each afternoon, the customer would appear as always, selecting their books carefully, offering silent companionship. They never explained, never spoke, yet their presence felt quietly purposeful. Each book they chose was another gentle clue, another delicate nudge toward remembering. Poetry collections that felt strangely personal, journals of old travelers longing for home, novels about rediscovering lost identities. Every evening, after they'd departed, I'd spend hours carefully piecing together the fragments they'd left behind, slowly stitching the lost memories back into my consciousness. Faces became clearer, streets more familiar, feelings sharper, more real. And each memory returned felt like an embrace, soft, comforting, gentle reassurance that my life, though quietly forgotten, had never truly vanished. Yet still, one piece remained elusive, the identity of my quiet customer. Why had they taken such care, leaving me gentle trails back to myself, without ever speaking or seeking acknowledgement? Were they a friend from my forgotten past, someone who had known me deeply, lovingly? Or were they a gentle guardian, a silent observer on Mars who understood the quiet ache of losing oneself? I knew I'd need to ask someday, yet I feared breaking our gentle silence. Words had become delicate again, fragile in the quiet between us. Still, my heart longed softly to know. Perhaps soon I'd find the courage to speak, to gently invite the mystery to unfold fully. But tonight I allowed myself peace. Sitting quietly behind the counter, the small shop softly glowing around me, I realized Mars had finally begun to feel like home. Not because I'd remembered everything, far from it, but because I'd begun to remember enough to know I had once belonged somewhere, to someone, to many someones, perhaps. And in this gentle bookstore, among stories of forgotten worlds and rediscovered hearts, I found myself whispering softly into the quiet, "I'm ready now." And as Mars drifted quietly beneath stars shimmering gently through tinted glass domes, I smiled softly, knowing my quiet customer would soon return, bringing with them the final piece of my forgotten puzzle.
Days passed softly, each one gently layered over the last, like pages of a cherished book. My quiet customer still visited daily, our silent exchange now carrying a delicate intimacy, an unspoken understanding shimmering gently between us. Each book they chose felt deliberate, carefully woven into the unfolding story of my reclaimed memories. And slowly, my past returned,
soft-edged moments drifting back into clarity, lovingly restored fragments of a forgotten self. Yet, one memory still remained quietly elusive, tucked away just beyond reach. The identity of the quiet stranger who had helped awaken my forgotten story. With every gentle interaction, my desire to speak grew stronger, tempered only by a tender reluctance to disturb the comforting silence we'd created. Finally, on a particularly soft Martian evening, as the shop's gentle lights warmed the shadows into soft amber pools, I knew the moment had arrived. My quiet customers stood patiently at the counter, book already chosen, their familiar posture radiating gentle patience. I drew a slow breath, meeting the deep shadows beneath their hood. "I remember now," I whispered softly, voice trembling slightly with gentle vulnerability. "Not everything, but enough to understand you've been guiding me back to myself. But who are you? Why have you done this?" Silence stretched softly between us, delicate as spun glass, yet comforting rather than fragile. For a moment, I thought they'd remain wordless forever, answering only in gentle mystery. But then, for the first time, the quiet customer lifted their hood, revealing a face I recognized instantly, familiar yet softer, older, eyes twinkling quietly with gentle humor and warmth. "You," I whispered, stunned, softly amused by the surreal yet tender absurdity of it all. You're me?" My quiet visitor smiled gently, nodding slowly, the gesture holding centuries of gentle wisdom. "A reflection, perhaps," they finally spoke, their voice quiet and warm, carrying a comforting resonance, like a familiar lullaby from childhood. "A version of you that never forgot, a caretaker of memories, if you like, born of the quiet loneliness of Mars. You created me, softly, unintentionally, from forgotten dreams and longing. I've been here all along, patiently waiting for you to find your way back." I felt tears gather gently at the corners of my eyes, yet they carried no sadness, only quiet relief, warm recognition. "Why now?" I asked softly, curiosity gently woven with wonder. "Why guide me back after all these years?" My reflection smiled tenderly, their eyes shining softly with gentle affection. "Because it's time. Mars gave you quiet refuge, gently sheltering you from memories too heavy to carry. But memories have a way of finding us again, softly reminding us of who we truly are. And now you're ready to carry them gently again, to let them guide you, comfort you." They reached out gently, placing their hand softly atop mine. The sensation, warm, familiar, impossibly comforting. "Remembering is always a quiet act of bravery," they whispered. "It's easier to drift, to forget, to leave the past softly behind. But true peace arrives only when you allow yourself to reclaim it, to carry it gently, lovingly forward." We stood quietly together, two reflections softly united beneath Mars' gentle twilight, surrounded by comforting books, each one a quiet witness to our shared moment of rediscovery. Gradually, my reflections stepped back softly, hood returning gently to obscure their face, reclaiming their familiar silence. "You don't need me now," they murmured quietly, their voice fading gently, warmly. "But I'll always be here, softly watching. Because the stories we tell ourselves, the quiet truths, gentle secrets, and forgotten dreams, they never truly leave us. They're written gently into our bones, softly carried in our hearts." They turned gently, moving quietly toward the door, each soft footstep leaving faint red marks against the polished floor. I watched as they paused at the threshold, silhouetted softly against Mars' delicate evening glow. "Wait," I whispered softly, voice gentle, hopeful. "Will you visit again?" They turned their heads slightly, just enough to glimpse the quiet smile that graced their hidden face. "Whenever you need me," they murmured, warmth radiating softly, reassuringly. And then, gently as they'd arrived, they stepped quietly out into the twilight, Mars' gentle stillness wrapping softly around them like a comforting cloak. In the quiet solitude that followed, I found myself smiling gently, feeling lighter, fuller, more whole than I'd felt in years. Memories swirled softly around me, gently reclaimed, tenderly carried. I moved quietly through my little bookstore, fingertips brushing lovingly along each spine, each story softly humming with quiet companionship. That night, beneath Mars' gentle stars softly shimmering above, I opened the data box once again, gazing lovingly at the photograph that had gently started it all. The faces smiling softly back at me no longer felt distant or strange. They felt warm, comforting, deeply familiar. Friends, family, lovers I'd known softly, gently, lovingly on earth, now carried quietly in my heart, never truly lost, only softly forgotten. As I gazed quietly into the soft, comforting image, I felt gentle tears once again, tears of gratitude, softly released into Mars's comforting silence. For memories, even painful ones, were precious. They reminded me gently, lovingly, that I had lived fully, deeply, courageously. The days that followed were gently beautiful, each morning softly opening new doors, each evening closing them gently behind. I still served tea each quiet morning, still watched the gentle dust softly settle across bookshelves, but everything now felt softly richer, deeper, gently meaningful. Each quiet moment held memories softly nestled inside, gently whispering their stories into the quiet silence. The quiet customer returned occasionally, always softly, gently, choosing books wordlessly, offering quiet companionship. Each time I'd smile softly, understanding their quiet presence was a gentle reminder, a comforting reflection of who I'd been, who I'd become, who I might softly yet become again. Eventually, word spread softly through the quiet domed towns of Mars. My little bookstore became gently known as a haven, a place softly whispered about, visited by those seeking quiet refuge, gentle wisdom, or simply a comforting place to remember softly who they'd once been, or who they dreamed softly of becoming. And quietly, gently, I'd welcome them, each visitor carrying their own softly hidden memories, their stories gently shimmering like faint starlight, quietly shared beneath the soft, glowing amber lights of Mars. But always, my quiet customer remained most cherished, a gentle reflection, softly reminding me of life's quiet bravery, reminding me softly, gently, lovingly, that sometimes our greatest mysteries lie quietly within ourselves. Those memories, even softly forgotten, are gently waiting to be reclaimed. And that no matter how far we've drifted or softly wandered, we always gently have a way of finding ourselves home again. Beneath the soft, shimmering stars of Mars, I closed the shop each evening quietly at peace, knowing each gentle memory, each quiet story was safely carried inside me, gently held, softly remembered. And as I drifted gently into sleep each night, surrounded softly by Mars's comforting silence, I'd whisper quietly, gently to myself, I'm home now. I'm finally home.
Dream archived. Sleep well.